Let's go to Benedikt, and Benedikt will give us the rightly timed flyover of the DSA and targeted ads. Thank you, Benedikt.
Good to see you guys iterating like the startups are, and happy it's working now. Just a quick reintroduction. I'm Benedikt with Allied for Startups. We're an umbrella of startup organizations like the Danish Entrepreneurs of Startup Canada. Thrilled to see tons of entrepreneurs here. Those are the real superstars. Those are the guys who it's all about. I'm here to give a mini overview of where we're at. So the EU is updating the rulebook for the digital economy, and it's also updating the rules for online platforms in the Digital Services Act. And the DSA is going to do many things, but it's going to address who is liable for illegal content, what due diligence platforms must undertake. And although it was not a part of the original plan, some members of the European Parliament have proposed a ban on targeted ads in the Digital Service Act. By ways of background, this has happened before in other tech dossiers as well. Often targeted ads are seen through a perspective of maybe one big tech player without necessarily thinking of the thousands of SMEs and startups, some in the room today, who are using them every day. Now, after a debate, a compromise was agreed in the Internal Market Committee, and this is not on the table right now, but a compromise was reached to have only a ban on targeted ads for minors. Now, we also still have questions how this would work practically, how to identify minors without asking for tons of additional verification and maintaining GDPR. But that's the compromise that is supposed to head to the plenary next week on the 19th and 20th. Now, in the plenary, we can expect many amendments from other MEPs to maybe retry and go for this ban on targeted ads again. So the discussion is actually super timely. And if the Parliament finds a final version, then this will go to the trilogue. So there will be negotiations with the Council and the Commission to make a final version. What we think is helpful now is if the Parliament can really stick to the compromise it's already reached. Nobody was super happy with the Internal Market Committee's compromise, but that was a compromise. And we feel that if we undercut this a lot now, then the Parliament might even end up weakening its own negotiating position vis-a-vis these other institutions. And in the long run, what we really want to have is an overdue, honest conversation about the role of targeted ads for SMEs and startup ecosystems before we face the same discussion as this is attached to the next digital dossier coming to the European Parliament again. Now, that being said, I'm looking forward to the discussion and to the many amazing examples. I'm quickly throwing the baton back to Peter.
For those of you missing the introduction, what we are trying today is to bring reality into the conversation through entrepreneurs, NGOs, actually working with targeted ads, and then we're going to bring in some fantastic MEPs for a panel discussion. Petra, you are truly working in a company empowering small businesses online. Please help us understand how small businesses make use of targeted ads in order to reach their potential markets.
So thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure being here discussing a very important topic. On behalf of myself, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Upbeater, but also the customers that we work with. So basically, to make it simple to understand, you can compare us with an agency working with startups to help them grow. And how we help them grow is by becoming their external marketing and branding team. More specifically, our teams consist of students who are supported by senior professionals. And the idea here is to both help the student gain practical experience by working on real cases, supported by a mentor in the senior professional, but also offer innovative and creative and affordable solutions for the startups that is also quality checked by senior professionals. And we help startups along the journey of starting with identifying their marketing growth potential, testing and validating that market potential and growth strategies, so that we can build a solid and proven go-to-market plan that can then be implemented by either us or the startups themselves. So before I hop in and talk about the relevance in our work and for us and for the startups, I just think it's very important to look at the constraints or the characteristics of our customers. They are extremely resource constrained. They are also very time pressured, and they are under constant performance review, meaning that they have external or internal stakeholders that are looking over their shoulder every day to see what traction they can generate, how much they can grow, how fast they can grow, and what they can do within a limited time and with the limited resources that they have, right? And that's going to determine the future. So good customer group to work with, you might think, and I've asked myself that as well. Maybe not, but at the same time, it's super exciting. It's a super exciting challenge to actually try to find ways to reach through the bus with limited means. And personally, this is something that I think all companies are doing, no matter the size of the company, that finding ways, creative ways, instead of just pushing out money into marketing, is something that I think is very, very fascinating and interesting. And this is the approach we take at Upbeater. We use an experimental approach to find those ways to reach through the bus. Because again, remembering that our startups or the customers that we work with, they barely have any marketing budgets, not to talk about ad spend budgets. So what does this mean then when we work with, when we talk about related to targeted ads and personalized ads, for example? In the process of identifying the market and growth potential, we do all the research for the companies to establish the market potential, the market mapping, customer mapping, and all the regular stuff that you start off with. And one of the most important things here is that we try to create a pretty good idea of how the target audience, what they look like, where they can be reached, through what channels, and with what message, right? These are the key pillars that we are then building a lot of the things that we are creating in terms of the marketing strategies upon. So that's one of the very first things that is where we start to narrow down and target the efforts of the marketing. Then we move on to set up hypotheses around these assumptions that we pretty much have made when we identify the target, the market potential, and we test and validate that, meaning that we have an idea. Now we need to A/B test if we are targeting correctly, and if we are using the right message through the right channels and to the right audience, right? And as we test these activities, we are learning more and more about the personas, about the target audience, so that we can specify the marketing activities better and target them better. Why is this important? It's because when we then create and build the go-to-market plan, we can look at all the data that we have collected and analyze it and evaluate it to validate or invalidate the hypothesis that we have put together as a start, and then draw conclusions and recommendations for where to spend the money so that it will have the best return on investment or the best return on ad spend. And again, I keep coming back to it, but it's super important for this target audience, because if you would just shoot wild and spend money without targeting them, it would be almost impossible to grow. And by identifying the marketing activities with the best return on investment and the best ROAS, then we can create a foundation for the startups to continue to grow and put more money into marketing where it actually gives results. That's when it comes to the implementation phase and so on. I'm gonna leave that for later stage speakers. But to give two examples of how this is how we work with our clients, and to give two examples of two of the clients that we work with, so you can understand how it works in practice, is, for example, one of our clients who is developing a solution for flexible co-working places and access to membership spaces. They are very location specific, so it would make sense to, again, shoot wild and target audiences, even, for example, across London, they are in London, when you try to reach someone to access a co-working space in East London, let's say. This target audience is also in direct need of the solution. So they're not looking for a permanent co-working solution. Then they can find that, they can take the time to research it. But here they're looking for something on the go that is flexible. So it's very important to understand where they are, where they can be reached, what time, and so on. And it's a very competitive space. So it's already expensive to market to this kind of audience. It's very competitive, which makes it even more important for us to be able to target the right audience at the right time. Another example here, that innovative treatment for rare diseases, and you can hear it already when I mention the word rare diseases, right? It's only for a very niche audience that this is relevant. So we need to be able to understand where we can find this audience by understanding, their interest, their search result, like their search intent, where they are, and be able to use retargeting ads. This audience are searching for a solution. They are interested in potential new innovative solutions to treat their disease. And so it is relevant for them, but only for a niche, this really, really niche group. It's also already a very regulated industry, the healthcare industry, what you can do when it comes to marketing for this industry. So it's very important that we can get this message across somehow. And this is where a targeted ad helps. And if we can't use targeted ads, not only for these two particular clients, but for all our clients, I would say that, again, like I mentioned, they will have to shoot wild and they are wasting money that they don't have. I mean, we're talking about an industry who's already very challenged with, as I said, time, resources, and whatever. The customer acquisition cost would increase and it will make it almost impossible to enter saturated markets and to grow, which is the key for this target audience. You might risk annoying people who are not interested in the ad, which is can have a negative impact on your brand. And, this is the beginning when you start to build a brand. So having a negative impact on the brand is almost impossible to recover from at an early stage. It would also be harder to gather relevant insight, which can have a negative impact on product development. And for us in particular, working with the next generation of innovators and talent, we would remove one of the competitive advantages towards big companies of actually entering the market and have a chance to succeed. So by saying that, I think it's super important for us to have a way to be able to reach the audience without the risk of dying in the process. Again, thank you so much for having me, and happy to discuss this further if you want to get in touch afterwards.
Thank you, Petra, for the overview and insight into, I think the last slide was a bit worrying, because that's like the core of entrepreneurship, to be able to penetrate and grow a market, to challenge and always get new innovative solutions to the market. So thanks for that. That's a powerful message. Now we move further in the program. We're going to talk about something very Danish, the licorice, but also a story on how it conquered the world. It's Licorice by Bülow. And with us, we have Ewald Hansen, e-commerce director at Lakrids by Bülow. And Michał, I'm curious to understand, as a scale-up, we've heard from smaller companies, you're on a big road to conquer the world. What does it mean for you to have access to these tools in your marketing toolbox?
Well, thank you for that presentation, Peter. You almost stole the first slide of me, but that's okay. So I mean, we are a niche company. We produce a niche product in a niche market. Confectionery is niche digitally, and we produce licorice, which is extremely niche in most markets around the world. And find the demographics that are relevant to us, and also retarget whenever they search for relevant terms it's very, very important for us, and especially during the lockdowns that began in early 2020 with the corona pandemic, when all our stores were suddenly closed, which had a huge impact for us, of course. Being able to scale our digital efforts has just been tremendously important to us, and we're seeing an adverse effect on some things that I'm going to talk about in the slides as well. Well, yeah, so my name is Michał and I represent Lakrids by Bülow. We are a licorice-based confectionery company out of a small Danish island called Bornholm here in Denmark. We founded almost 15 years ago by Johan Bülow. And as you mentioned, Peter, we now have approximately just short of 30 stores. We have wholesale resale partners in as many as almost 30, 40 countries, 2,000 of them. And we also sell in department stores, travel retail, and e-commerce and online is a very important part, more than a third of our total business today. And a lot of that has been to the possibility of doing targeted ads. But our overarching mission is we want to make the world love licorice. We produce a licorice-based confectionery. We coat it with chocolate, and that opens up new markets that have not previously been interested in licorice. So that's quite important for us. And when entering new markets where people don't know or are familiar with licorice, it's very important to try and find the right demographics that might fall in love with our product. So just 10 seconds, we are of course made in Denmark, and we focus a lot on community, a lot on dialogue. Sustainability is a very, very important factor for us, and we try to incorporate that in a lot of our messaging. And we have a very unique product, and we've been fortunate enough to have a quality and be able to find the right audiences for us. So we have been scaling with a compound annual growth rate of approximately 10% over the last 15 years. So that's hugely popular, hugely successful in our eyes. And as you mentioned, we are scale up. And of course, over the years, we've started using targeted ads more because it was harder and harder to reach the right audience. And I sort of tried to exemplify some of the basic concepts of how we use these targeted ads. We run typically what is called a 4-step funnel. And the first step in this funnel is where we try to find new people that might be interested in our products. That might be someone that never heard of us. It might be someone within an age group that we know is typically interested. That may be based by geography or interest or similar. We also try to utilize some of these platforms to help us find relevant people, so we don't just shoot in the blind, as was previously mentioned by another speaker, Petra. And in the first step, we try to go broad and say, hey, we have some licorice products and entice interest. And once people start to show some sort of interest, that might be coming to our front page, or they are engaging with our social ads, communicating with us, and then we would like to try and show them maybe some more content on our product. It might be the taste or some specific campaigns that we're running, like free shipping or similar style. And when some of these people take an even greater interest in our product and show more of a signal that they are actually interested, then we might show specific tastes or try to tell them about some of the services that we provide, and actually support any purchase decision that they might take. And lastly, we, of course, when people become a loyal customer of ours, and a loyal supporter, which we have many of, we will want to reach them and tell them about our new limited editions that we typically launch 5-10 times a year, because they are interested in it, and some of these people are waiting for it. And if it's hard to reach them with the ads, it's hard to tell them that we have these products. So what we've experienced, especially, and I wanted to exemplify what happens when you limit targeted ads. And this is actually something that hit the real world hard in April when when Apple decided to roll out their iOS 14.5, which has a lot of the effect of limiting options that you have. So I wanted to bring a graph, and this is the columns show the average return that we get on our ad spend month by month over the last 3 years. And the line graph shows the average cost of 1,000 impressions that we get on these advertising platforms. And as you see, iOS 14.5 was released in April 2021, and we saw a quite immediate effect in the weeks and months after. We saw a dramatic climb in CPM, and that climb in CPM hurt us so that our return on ad spend dropped quite dramatically. The only outlier is August, and the reason the end of August is good for us is because we launched a Christmas calendar, and we just see people going crazy for that in a very brief period. But overall, in 2021, we saw that our return on ad spend dropped by 25%, typically on average. And this resulted in us needing to spend 2.5 to 3 million extra in advertising spend to get the same amount of volume that we would have gotten with a higher return on ad spend over the years. And it came quite dramatically within a few weeks, because we simply had a harder time finding the right audience and showing them the relevant content on our products. It has profound consequences for us when we can't find the right audience. And what will happen for us is just an increased cost to advertise. We will have to go broader to get the same amount of relevant people to see our products. We will be, of course, pouring a lot of our bottom line over into the tech company's bottom line, because we need to dial up, and it will just, these 2.5-3 million in increased advertising spend go straight to a loss on bottom line. It's not just a number out there. It has real world impact. And thirdly, another huge issue is, and I see this as well, because I try to switch off tracking on and off in iOS. And once you are out of the targeted ads, you just get a lot more irrelevant advertising. And interestingly enough, an analogy is that you could build the best ad in the world. If you can hit the best ad on dog food, but if you're only hitting people with cats, you'll just waste money and you'll never get anything from it. And this is sort of what is happening when we can't target the right audience. The audience will just see more irrelevant stuff. So
very interesting point, Michael, and also well documented. And you're talking into the same point as Petra in regards of wasting money and challenging market positions out there. We will meet you again in the panel. I think it's really important to keep startups into the conversation as long as possible. And I appreciate all of you to take your time. It's so important that you guys spend your scarce time in talking to politicians, because startups don't really always have the right bandwidth. So we will see you later. Now it's getting really interesting. I talked to Merete, and Merete is fundraising and marketing director of Save the Children, and works on several different audiences, from the people in need to volunteers to getting donors into the organization and supporting your cause. Merete, I'm really pleased that you're here. Can you take our viewers through what targeted ads means for an NGO? I would be very curious.
Thank you so much. My name is Merete, and I'm, as Peter said, I'm heading up the fundraising and marketing department in the Danish member of Save the Children. And just a few words on Save the Children. We are one of the leading organizations fighting for children's rights throughout the world. We work in Denmark and we work in 120 countries around the world. We're focusing on our health programs, whether that is delivering food or delivering health services. We're focusing in on education, and we are focusing in on protecting children from all kinds of violence, including online violence. So it is relevant here to say that actually 50% of our international programs is focusing in on fragile states. So that means that a very big part of our international programs is about supporting children hit by some kind of emergency, whether that is a conflict within their country or whether it is emergencies caused by climate changes. I will tell you just a bit about our funding model, because Save the Children Denmark is based on two fundraising streams, and 80% of the funds that we get is from governmental institutions and foundations. And the nature of these funds is that we're talking about restricted funds. So that is funds restricted to particular specific programs in a particular part of the world. For instance, it could be an education project in Mali, or it could be a protection project in Syria or whatever. And then 20% of our funds come from private individuals and corporates, with the vast majority coming from private individuals. And that's basically the most important funds, because that is the funds that not only lays the ground for at all being able to have an organization, but it is also the funds that enables us to continue vital programs whenever the restricted grants expire. I mean, you can't just say, yes, we will help these kids and then suddenly stop. So these are the flexible funds, enables us to fulfill our mission of really helping the most marginalized children in the world, whatever the institution thinks are the most marginalized children. It is also these unrestricted funds that are used to training volunteer staff, and I will come back to that later for our domestic programs. And it is essential money to co-finance larger grants from the institutional donors, like, for instance, the EU. So I have brought 3 examples of how we use targeted advertising, and the first one is around emergency fundraising. So when an emergency hits, really the most important and crucial period of time is the first 48 hours after the emergency has hit. That is about providing really, truly life-saving assistance to help those families. What is also interesting is that we're basically operating within the same period of time if we are to take advantage of the fundraising potential. So emergencies, as we say in the fundraising world, is really a huge window of opportunity. That is the time where donors are eager to support, and in particular, if emergency is high. But the media attention tends to be high in the very few first days after an emergency has hit, and then media lose interest. And the same goes for our donors. So we have this very short window of opportunity, and to avoid having to put out a very big investment, which basically we don't know will work, then we are very, very quick, and we're talking within just a few hours, then we start testing in various target groups, in various audiences, where is the response. And wherever the response is, then we scale up very quickly. So really taking advantage of this huge window of opportunity within the right audience, because not every audience is interested in supporting the same kind of emergencies. So the second example is around our annual door-to-door collection. And we are 1 in 15 organizations in Denmark who has a special permission to do this annual door-to-door collection of cash once a year. And the way we do it is that we mobilize up to 10,000 families to walk door to door, to spend a few hours on a Sunday afternoon, walking door to door to collect cash on our behalf. And it is, of course, a very important event to secure these unrestricted necessary funding, but it's also an important event to really raise awareness about our cause within the Danish households. The one and only key to success, key to financial success for this event is to acquire a lot of volunteer collectors. And there's a very strong coherence between number of collectors and the financial result. So, but as we are 15 organizations doing this is a really competitive market. And we would like to cover the whole Denmark with collectors taking routes. And various tests. We have tested all kind of adverts. We have tested adverts saying, hey, kids really need this, showing kids needs. We have tested showing happy kids. We have tested saying, hey, you will be part of a strong community spending hours to collect cash for us. But the thing that works better than anything else is that if we are able to say, hello, Copenhagen, we have some routes near you in your own neighborhood. Please go and sign up for this particular route in this particular Sunday. That basically changes our ads from being just seen as spam, and we've heard about that earlier from the other speakers, to really being seen as relevant and as transparent. We are transparent about what do we need. We have uncovered routes in your neighborhood. Do you want to help us? So, the third example I have brought is basically about, it's not about fundraising, it's about being able to perform our programs. So I was talking about earlier on that we have some strong domestic programs. And one of our very, very important focus to really make sure that we reach the most marginalized children in every context is to focus on vulnerable children from families with no or very little resources. So what we do is that we work with volunteers to make sure that we give these kids an opportunity to get out of the ghettos and into nature, into sports activities, basically into friendships and into healthy networks with good and positive role models. However, if we cannot get volunteers, then we do not have any of that kind of those programs. And getting volunteers is getting increasingly harder. It's also becoming a competitive market. And that means that we are actually facing serious issues not having enough volunteers to perform these type of programs towards Danish kids. That means an increased need for marketing activities to really acquire those volunteers. And also here, targeted ads is a really good way and essential way if we are to keep cost of program down, because naturally it takes some cost to advertise to get those volunteers. But just by focusing in on, hey, we need volunteers in Copenhagen, will you help us? Instead of just sending out the adverts to the broader part of Denmark. And also knowing which kind of other demographic specifics is relevant for potential volunteers. It really makes us keep costs down and enables us to acquire volunteers without having exploding marketing costs. So. Yes, Peter, you said that we will be hit 3 times if we are facing a ban on targeted marketing, and that is that the one and only judge we're standing in front of when we are to collect funds, these unrestricted funds, is the private donors. And if they perceive the fundraising cost too high, then they will just cease to support, because they want their money to go to programs, and they want us to have administrative and fundraising costs as low as possible. So that's the one risk that we are facing if we're not able to perform targeted advertising. Another judge is actually the authorities, because this special permission that we have to perform door-to-door collection is really depending that we can demonstrate an ROI, a return of investment, of at least 3. And if we're not able to do that, then we will lose our permission. And targeted advertising are really helping us to do this. And then, as I told for the last example, the cost of programs would just rise dramatically if we're not able to target our advertising, but if we're bound to advertise broadly. So we will be hit on rising costs of programs, on rising costs of fundraising, and potentially of these very critical donors leaving us.
Merete, thank you very much for a touching story and some key points around targeted ads in getting an NGO like yours to run with the highest impact possible. I think that's the interest of most. So now we're going to go into the more political context, and we're going to take all your inputs, both from the startups and obviously also from Save the Children. And I think that there are some key points around how do a startup enter a new market, like particularly a crowded market, without the ability to hit the potential customers razor sharp. We also heard from Lakrids by Bülow. How are we gonna grow our business and avoid throwing dollars down the drain without the ability to find the traits in our potential customers and address them. And finally, we heard the story of impacted factor 3 on all the audiences that the NGO Save the Children is working on is impacted. So we will be moving into the panel discussion. We have a champion among us. She could unfortunately not be here today. It's the rapporteur on the DSA, Christel Schaldemose, one of the key actors in this. But she sent us a keynote address, and let's use this as a platform, and then I will introduce you to the panel. Let's meet Christel.
Thank you for inviting me to this event. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take part live, but I am happy for the opportunity to provide my inputs to the discussion nonetheless. As you know, the European Parliament has worked hard on the new digital golden standards for the past year. The Digital Service Act and the Digital Markets Act are on the table. Later this month, we will adopt our proposal here in the European Parliament for the DSA, and after that, we're going to enter into negotiations with the Council. This new horizontal legislation will have a significant impact on the digital sphere in Europe. We are considerably improving consumers' protection and also transparency. In my opinion, we are leveling the playing field, and we are improving competitiveness for European online businesses. And we are introducing the rights for remedies and compensation for both consumers and businesses using the intermediary services. The DSA will expand the small and medium-sized enterprises' possibilities to establish themselves and hopefully thrive better in the European digital internal market. By asserting greater responsibility through better risk assessment on large and very large online platforms, I hope that we are leveling the playing field and by that benefiting small and medium-sized companies. I know that what you might also be interested to hear about is the new rules on targeted advertising, a very hot topic here in the European Parliament. The text, as it is now, after the vote in the Internal Market Committee, includes several new provisions regarding targeted online advertisement. First of all, we're trying to improve transparency of online advertisement by introducing harmonized markings of advertisements, including also advertisements from influencers. This is in order to make sure that users of platforms know when they're exposed to advertisement. I think that this will make it easier for users and consumers to navigate the online services, and hopefully it will also strengthen consumers' trust in online services and products. Secondly, we are also reinforcing the intention of the GDPR by underlining that refusing targeted ads should not be more difficult than accepting targeted ads. This enhances consumer choices and will hopefully diminish cookies fatigue. I have it, and I think you have it as well. And it will improve consumers' experience with online ads. Thirdly, but not least, the recipients should be able to receive information about, for instance, how their data is monetized. This will further enhance transparency and hopefully allow recipients and consumers to better understand how their data are being used. I think this is important. And finally, and this is maybe the biggest step we're taking, we are introducing a ban on targeted advertisement towards minors. The ban is only towards minors, and we believe this is important because they are significantly more vulnerable and maybe less critical in their consumption than other groups of consumers. I think this is very important. So, DSA, being the new digital golden standard, will lead to new standards in general in our digital internal market. It will take some time for all of us to get used to it, both for consumers and businesses. But I have no doubt that the resilient and innovative European businesses will manage, and that the consumers will approve this and even use online environment even better. So the new standards will be better for consumers, creating better experiences for consumers, and fairer competition for businesses. What's not to like? With the DSA, we are taking a huge and needed step forward in creating better and fairer rules for our digital internal market. And I'm so happy that I have been participating in this, and I really, really look forward to us negotiating the final rules. Thank you so much for your attention, and also the invitation to share my views on some of the important aspects of the DSA. I wish you all a fruitful discussion for the rest of this event. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you from Schaldemose. Inspiring and exciting what is coming up. And as I said in the beginning, the timing is just right. It's going to be a busy next week. So I'm happy that we have good people among us. We will go through the panelists one by one now. First, we will have Henna Virkkunen. Henna has been working with digitalization for a very long time, and also been one of the key voices for startups and SMEs in Europe. So Henna, you will be up first. I will give you 5 minutes to present your take on today. You've been along most of the way. And obviously your position and thoughts on targeted ads. Thank you for joining us, Henna.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be with you today. And as we heard, the timing is just very good, because in next week in the plenary we are supposed to vote on the European Parliament's position about this DSA, and after that we have to negotiate with the Council what will be the last outcome of the text and the regulation. But anyway, very important week ahead of us, and we know that there is specific issues, just like targeted advertising, with very different opinions among the members in the European Parliament. I have been representing industry committee in these negotiations. I'm rapporteur of the Industry, Energy and Research Committee, ITRE. And that's why, of course, my main position has been all the time to take care that our SMEs, our startups, our innovations, that they can flourish in Europe. In the same time, when I think that it's important that we are setting clear rules in the regulation, that we can't have different rules in offline world and in online world. So in the same time, we have to take care that we are not over-regulating our digital markets, that we have that kind of regulation that encourages new ideas and innovations and encourages our startups and SMEs to grow in Europe. In the same time, when it's important that they have a level playing field and fair competition in the digital market. And it's not easy. As we know, we have some very large online platforms, and they are very powerful when we think about economical and social impacts they are having. So it's crucial for our SMEs also to try to create level playing field and room for innovation for them also in the European markets. But when it comes to this targeted advertising, I see also that it's very important part of our digital markets and our internet. And it's one of the most important, of course, tools for our SMEs and startups, how they can reach their potential customers. So, because they don't have the same money to put to TV advertising or to newspapers and so on to cover and reach everybody, because of digitalization, it's easier to really reach your potential customers and users. And as we know, this DSA, it covers now any type of online advertising, from digital marketing to issue-based advertising and political ads also. It's important that the rules, they should complement the existing general data protection regulation, and that already established rules on users' consent and also their right to object to targeted digital marketing. Now the new DSA should ensure that the users, that they are very well informed whether and why they are targeted by each ad and who paid the ad. So I think it's important that we are trying to create more transparency to digital world. I think that targeted advertising can benefit businesses by tailoring advertisements to match interests of the consumers, to offer their products and services to reach them better. And we have known and we have recognized during the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been really accelerated digitalization and also shifted many interactions online. Targeted advertising is particularly important for small businesses to reach now the consumers through digital means. So I think also that the use of targeted advertisement is important for our SMEs in order to ensure a level playing field and for more small businesses to be able also to compete on a European scale with the larger companies. However, at the same time, we know that the very large platforms, they have wider access to data and they have more resources and brand recognition that helps them in advertising. And this can create challenges for SMEs to compete with. But strong restrictions on targeted advertising would have a negative effect to small businesses, that's for sure, as larger businesses do not rely on targeted advertising to the same extent in order to reach potential consumers. So especially, I think we have to be very careful now when we are setting new rules for targeted advertising, that we have to take care that we are not making harm for our SMEs and startups. Online marketplaces, they will have strong transparency requirements under the proposed DSA. And like it was mentioned here, the proposed DSA, this compromise IMCO committee has reached, will include a ban of commercial advertising for children and minors, as they cannot be expected to consent to such advertising. But of course, it's very important discussion now that how this will happen, because in the same time we know with the general data protection regulation that there is restrictions also that how we can, profile the users in internet, and there is many questions around this political compromise that has found now in IMCO committee, and I'm very interested also to hear more your thoughts about it. But I think it's important that we are not banning targeted advertising, but more transparency is needed, and I think we can easily create more transparency to our digital world, but it's crucial for our SMEs that they can reach their customers and potential customers with targeted advertising.
Thank you, Virkkunen, for a very clear message. I hope we can dig down into restricting or banning ads for minors in the panel. But let's get the other panelists on board. First, we have Greg Mroczkowski. Greg, I will just give you 3 minutes because I make the rules, and I would like the MEPs to really tell about their positions in this panel. So please take the word, Greg.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. If you can confirm only that the sound is okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for the invitation. Surely a timely opportunity to take stock of the policy discussions that we have been having for, I think, over year and a half. Europe represents the broad digital advertising and marketing ecosystem, and we practically work with any interested party with investment in digital advertising. So this is a very relevant discussion. And from our perspective, we have been most concerned about proposals to ban or restrict targeted advertising, or even more broadly, data-driven advertising. I think that the DSA discussions as such, but also this event very well demonstrate that any further heavy restrictions on the business model would have severe unintended consequences for SMEs, for smaller markets, for consumers, also other type of organizations, because targeted advertising is an essential low-cost tool that helps connect businesses as well as organizations with new consumers or other audiences that they would want to use. And indeed, digital advertising, data-driven advertising, has been pioneering the better addressability of the right audiences. This discussion, we feel it's not only just about advertising, it would be also about free and open nature of the internet, media pluralism, because this is the advertising would be the primary funding model that enables publishers to fund their content and services. Now, while the decision, at least in the IMCO committee, not to proceed with a blanket ban on targeted advertising is obviously a very welcome move, we feel that policymakers must remain alive to the value of targeted advertising and possibly risks of some remaining provisions, and I think some of them have been mentioned by Ms. Schaldemose as well as Ms. Virkkunen. And on that note, we have been consistently warning of any overlap with the existing law, in particular the EU privacy and data protection framework, and consequences thereof, including lack of legal clarity for the businesses that actually seek to comply with the law, and eventually perhaps successful enforcement of the legal framework. And here I would like to just briefly flag 3 items. So first, we are concerned about the proposed rules on the so-called the dark patterns, which could undermine in one way or another the GDPR and directly interfere with the work of data protection authorities. So specifically, Article 13A 1E would take away publishers' right to independently interact with the user, asking them for consent in case a software privacy setting, for instance, in a browser, was set on. And we don't feel that this is a technology-neutral approach. And we must remember here that it's the publisher, not a browser or an operating system that offers content or service to the user. Second, we have similar concerns about some of the stipulations with respect to consent, including Article 13A 1B, that would put in place prohibition on repeatedly requesting a recipient of the service consent to data processing when they have already refused to do so. I think Ms. Schaldemose flagged that in her remarks. But in fact, these are the issues that are being addressed in the DPA's guidance, which are being rolled out as we speak, and many of which we have already seen. And third, indeed, there are some open and unanswered questions about the consequences about how in practice a ban on targeted advertising to minors would materialize. And what I mean here is there's a general concern if age verification will be allowed under these rules in the first place. If it were impossible to ensure compliance with the rules, companies would probably need to err on the side of caution, stopping maybe any profiling of users or targeted advertising. And it doesn't seem that this is the intended effect of the of those stipulations. So I would stop here. I'm not sure if I was within the time, but hopefully it's fine. Thank you.
You stole an extra minute, Greg, but thank you. And now I'm really excited to have Patrick Breyer among us. Patrick, thank you so much for joining. I know you as a digital freedom fighter, defending human rights in the digital age. And obviously MEP as well. Patrick, could you reflect on your views on targeted ads? And also you had a chance to hear a little bit from our cases today. I'm curious to understand your position.
Thank you for having me. Let me stress at the outset that even though I'm the Civil Liberties Opinion Rapporteur on the Digital Services Act, I'm speaking here in my personal capacity. And first of all, I would like to stress that we are not opposed to targeted advertising, but we oppose surveillance-based advertising, which is based on personal and even intimate personality profiles that are used to infer our most intimate problems, fears, and even future behavior. So why is that? The European Parliament pointed out in its resolutions on the Digital Services Act that the online activities of an individual allow for deep insights into their past and future behavior and make it possible to manipulate them. Users shall therefore be given a right not to be subjected to pervasive tracking when using digital services. Furthermore, it has been understood to constitute a risk to national security that ad tech and data brokers have sold potentially sensitive bitstream data even to companies based in Russia, China, the United Arab Emirates, which are really a gold mine to foreign intelligence services that could exploit it for hacking, blackmailing, influencing foreign companies, etc. And unlike surveillance-based advertising, contextual advertising also allows for targeting audiences based on the context of an advertisement or keywords in it, such as search terms a user entered and the like. And it will also allow for a measure of localization, which was addressed earlier today. A 2019 empirical study found that revenues would drop by as little as 4% if surveillance data was not used. And contextual advertising strategies have proven to be at least, if not more successful in terms of targeting accuracy and actual turnover. Also, consumers like ads better if they are relevant to the context which they are reading. And according to a study commissioned by my group, tracking-based advertising publishers can expect to keep as little as 30% of the revenue generated, whereas contextual platforms offer publishers as much as 85%. Contextual advertising also levels the playing field of online platforms in comparison to the traditional media, some of which are existentially threatened in their existence, as well as in comparison to advertisers and small, medium-sized companies. By the way, I've been told of a poll according to which European SME leaders are themselves critical of the privacy implications of tracking-based advertising, as well as of the dependency of their companies on the dominant surveillance-based tech companies, and that they would support big online platforms such as Facebook or Google facing more regulation in this regard. So it's very interesting that SME leaders themselves are saying this. And setting aside this, my personal view that I have just set out, what my Civil Liberties Committee in fact recommends is something different, and that was supported by nearly all groups in my committee. And the proposal is to ban surveillance-based advertising for non-commercial political purposes altogether, as well as using sensitive data or targeting minors specifically. Also, we propose to give users a truly free choice, meaning that they shouldn't be faced with fatiguing and disrupting banners and even tracking walls. By banning dark patterns, by ensuring preferences expressed in device settings are respected, and by not allowing providers to shut out users altogether that will not agree to surveillance-based advertising. So just to stress that the other fair and reasonable options that we are calling for can compensate for any loss of revenue, for example, by using contextual based advertising. Now, some of these elements that were proposed by my Libe committee are part of the IMCO report, as the rapporteur set out in the video that we've seen. Some more of them will be voted separately next week in the European Parliament. And I will close by saying that businesses, including small, medium-sized businesses, have no reason to be afraid of the obvious trend away from using personalized surveillance data and to using contextual advertising strategies instead. Contextual offers great opportunities, and be innovative, be in line with what your customers want and expect. And it seems that European SMEs increasingly are, and I'm very glad to hear that.
Thank you, Patrick. Very interesting. I've been looking at, I've been around with the internet, started my first online company before 2001, and we had a lot of, the only option was contextual ads at that time. So I remember the days, and I know it's been much more sophisticated now. I would like, and I think it's important that we have Michał still in our panel from Bülow, and I would like your reflection on what we have the distinction here around targeted ads versus contextual ads. Can you elaborate a bit on the differences and what it would mean for a business like yours?
Sure. Lots of interesting points being discussed now, but in this case, if you look at contextual advertising and the general digital advertising and marketing is all about where the attention is. That's the foundation of advertising, and the attention is not in the places where contextual ads live. Of course, people are reading blogs. Of course, people are reading articles, and they might consume content on the internet. But anyone knowing how people consume the internet knows that people are not spending only a fraction of their attention and time on the internet reading blogs. Most people spend time on social media, engaging with people that they know of. They are engaging with content on anything from YouTube to TikTok, etc. That's the bulk, the vast majority of time spent. And this is where the targeted ads come into place. And a lot of these contextual ad options that are out there today, they might be sophisticated, then they might be great, and they might show some promising, but when you're using it in a place where the attention is not present, it just doesn't have an effect on the business, and we just don't see it come anywhere close to the scale that we can actually get from running digital marketing in the big platforms.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. I will get back to you because you obviously need to bring your reflection as well. But I would like to go to you, Henna, because as an outsider, of the Brussels bubble, so to speak. It's a little bit confusing. When are we discussing targeted ads? Is it in e-privacy? We also had when the Commission came with a high-risk AI. Is targeted ads? Is it subliminal techniques? Now we have it again in the DSA. Wouldn't it be smarter to make a separate bill or discuss this issue separately instead of getting it tangled into all other sort of discussions?
Yeah, I think that is good idea. But when there is more than 700 active members in the European Parliament, they are of course making initiatives wherever they see that there could be room for that kind of actions. But I also think that I think it's important that we should have same rules in online world than we have in offline world. But of course, it's much more complicated than when we are going to legislation, because in online world we cannot take many that kind of actions that didn't exist before. So like this targeted advertising, like we can do it in very sophisticated way in internet, we couldn't do it before when we were printing the advertising and so on. Couldn't target it so well. So now we know that Commission has prepared also different initiative about the political ads, and it's a little bit different thing, of course, than the commercial ads. But anyway, I still think that we shouldn't make, very much restrictions for that, because I think just that more transparency is needed there. And also the people who are using internet, they should have also the proper skills how to work in this digital world, because I think we can't protect people from everything what is in the internet. So I think it's important to educate the people and give digital skills for them, that they have also themselves the tools that how to work there, how to survive in digital world. And they should have also consumers' choices there, that if they want to have some kind of content or if they don't want to have. And more transparency is needed there, and the people should know also how to work there. So I think it's better than banning and restricting very much things, to give more transparency and give more options for the people and more skills and choice for them also.
Thank you, Henna. And Patrick, I'm curious for your reply when you hear Michael is considered, the leading marketeer, online marketeer in Denmark, because I'm not sure that contextual ads will create the same results. And then one more thing, Patrick, is also when we ban on minors, and I think everyone understands the need of protecting minors differently from what Henna said, that we could also overprotect other audiences. But how are we going to implement it? We heard Greg talking about that we might clash with GDPR. I understand recently in France, self-verifications was not deemed enough for compliance. How far will platforms need to go? And I guess you're not in favor of uploading IDs and giving even more information. So maybe you can reflect on these two areas.
First of all, let me say that I will concede that obviously it is useful to be able to use surveillance information to target persons based on their personality. Quite clearly, it is effective, as we have seen, for example, when it was used to influence elections and referendums. However, what must prevail is our fundamental right to privacy, and also the need to protect the integrity of democracy, to protect the discourse, integrity of discourse in our society. And that's why I say that contextual advertising is an adequate replacement. Let's not forget that even as we speak, many users are using ad blockers to entirely block all efforts to target them. And so let's not pretend that so far it was possible to target all users anyway. As I say, there is a development anyway, and it's a good idea for companies to be part of that and innovative. We're not proposing what's on the table in Parliament is not a ban. It's exactly about allowing and enhancing user choice. But for users to have a real choice, they cannot be threatened by disrupting their browsing experience or even being shut out altogether. And that's why all of those proposals that are on the table are about enhancing, giving users a truly free choice. And as for the ban on minors, in my committee's recommendations, it was worded differently. What we seeked to ban was to target minors specifically, right? So I agree that we don't want additional data to be collected in order to implement this ban. But there is also a recital in the IMCO report saying that the Parliament doesn't want that to take place. So we can only use what information we have to where we know anyway that a person is a minor, to apply this provision. And obviously it may need some reworking and improving in the process further down the line.
So if my thinking is that if we can't verify if it's a minor or not, we might risk that we break the law when we do address audiences. So there need to be some kind of security around running campaigns. Otherwise you might say, hey, we can't run targeted ads altogether because we do not know if we are targeting a minor. So there needs to be some solid installment in place, I guess. Maybe over to you, Greg, and we will wrap up soon. I want to understand how you will have your members implement a ban on targeted ads on towards your members. Have you done any thoughts around that?
I'm sorry. Do you have in mind? Do you have in mind the minors?
Yes, on minors. Yes,
minors ban. Yes. So I think as I have flagged, there are some open and unnecessary questions around that. I would probably really want to give a straight answer to this. But in reality, we heard from a number of our members that it's unclear to them how this would happen. Just trying to quickly understand what is in the text. So that's why I think it's useful that we are having this discussion and bringing this to the attention of the policymakers. Maybe just for reflection, it's interesting to note once more. Looking at the DPA's activities, recently the Irish DPA, DPC, they have released their so-called fundamentals, a paper which provides guidance on the approach to data processing in relation to children, and not really going into the nitty-gritty. I just wanted to observe that it took 3 years and 3 separate consultation with different audiences, and I think that just underscores how difficult it is to sometimes flesh out things in practice. So we need to be very cognizant of that while devising a new legal instrument.
Thank you very much. So we will leave the panel now. I would like to thank especially the MEPs for taking your precious time. I know these are busy times for you, and especially next week will be really, really tough. And I think the main takeaway is to also keep startups and SMBs on the top of your mind when you need to decide the future of digital Europe. Thank you very much. And last but not least, we had the fantastic opportunity to have Michał Boni with us today. Michał is the maestro of digital throughout a lot of years in Europe, as a minister in Poland, as a very visible MEP within this field. And Michał Boni, thanks for joining us. I will leave you with the closing remarks from what you heard today. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me? Everything is okay? Fine. Thank you very much for having me, organizing this excellent meeting, and thank you very much to all panelists, because I think it was very fruitful and very inspiring. Thank you for discussion and presentation of many views and practical experiences, how the targeted ads are needed and relevant when, for example, we are talking about various activities as helping people to deliver the clean water, as Trin have presented, or how to fit users and potential consumers to the product, as Petra clearly described in her presentation, and also how to collect money in the new world, digital world, when it is very important, and how to mobilize potential volunteers, as Merete presented in her view. Again, thank you very much for avoiding the black, white, and 0-1 model of understanding the functionalities of targeted ads, especially in the second part of the meeting, of the discussion. And thank you for the understanding that there is no possibility to establish the total ban of targeted ads, because at the beginning of the parliamentary discussion, there were some concerns, but there were some voices that we need to close the way and we need to ban totally the targeted ads. And of course, thank you very much for putting some practical points and remarks, how to implement the compromise in DSA on the ban of targeted ads addressed to minors, how to identify the minors. And I share these concerns, but on the other hand, I think this is a challenge and we need to solve the problem. But what was very important for this discussion, that in my mind, that not targeted ads are the problem. The problem is related to the model of targeted ads. It was clear, it was clearly visible at the end of our discussion. And I think that just before the parliamentary voting, we need to understand that we all probably understand how important the targeted ads are. But on the other hand, we need to consider what kind of rights, fundamental rights, are important for users. So this is the debate and this is the controversy between, as it was done and presented by Patrick and Michał in the last panel, between the view we don't want to have surveillance-based ads, and we have some concerns related to contextual ads. But in my mind, it is very important to consider in details all those aspects, because practically the Parliament probably will not ban the targeted ads, but the discussion how to improve, how to make it much more transparent, as Henna Virkkunen said, is very important for the future. So try to find a balance between the obvious interest of the business, especially small business. I fully agree. But on the other hand, with ours as users, as consumers, rights to have a choice in some situations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boni. I agree that we need to find balances, and that's the beauty of politics and from the startup community. For those that have time to look at the DSA, there's been a great relief around the balance right now, and we'll be following closely the plenary session next week, and obviously what's up on the table. So for all of you that joined later or skipped through, you will be able to find the live stream on the same link. Also, we will distribute a write-up of what have been said and what have been done. And we will continue to engage in the dialogue around these topics from startups' point of view. Thank you, all of you, for taking your time to participate, also with the few bumps we had on the road. And thank you for our audience that has been with us throughout. See you soon. Thank you very much.